Welcome. My name is Abel Sanchez. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about the Internet of Things. I'll talk about it in terms of three generations. The first one is the one that achieved the vision of IoT. The second one broadened this idea, and it was adopted by many other industries and many other domains. The third one, building on this base, is adding new technologies such as machine learning, cloud computing to start to transform industries. So let's go ahead and get started here at the beginning. At the end of the 90s, the idea was a very simple one. How do we connect a physical object to the internet? Much like documents were connected to the web and the world could get access to them, in this case, the question was how can we take an object and share data about it universally? A lot of the work that was done here in the early days at MIT was in realizing the hardware. How do we lower the cost of tags? How do we make readers cheap and pervasive? How do we create a data stack, or how do we create a software stack to support this? A lot of the sponsorship was done by fast-moving consumer goods, and so a lot of the initial use cases were supporting supply chains. However, as the second generation kicks in, we see this idea broaden, and it comes back to that original simple idea. How do we connect a physical good onto the internet, a physical object? And in this case, a myriad of other technologies come in to support, but ultimately the idea is the same. How do we create this physical web, this Web 3.0, where we can get visibility across the globe? And so I want to now shift to a couple of examples that illustrate what's taking place in the marketplace and how certain industries are being transformed. I want to start out by talking about agriculture. When I mention this word, this is probably what comes to mind. This is certainly what comes to my mind. This is what you might see in a field. Many of us have seen it. However, what's taking place in agriculture is really surprising. The amount of devices that are being used in the field, Internet of Things devices, are really surprising. The amount of instrumentation and inspection and data collection that is taking place is really something that you only saw by technology companies before. Weather simulation, for example, is something that is being used. The difference between being wiped out or having a successful harvest has to do with how deep you place a seed. 1 inch makes the difference between success or failure. You already start to see companies like the one you're looking at right here, which is called Field Intelligence, that is supporting, in this case, several different cases within agriculture. And you can see here that some of what you might have seen, say, in business analytics is now being provided to the farmer. And so the agricultural landscape is becoming very much a high-tech one. Another example I wanted to mention is that of football, American football. This is certainly an environment where physical mass, strength, speed certainly gave you an advantage. But the industry is changing, much like in everywhere else. Having instrumentation within the players, and in this case in the National Football League, there is already an effort to instrument every single team with RFID tags in their shoulder pads and to collect all of that information across the league. You can imagine how a coach picking up all of this information might start to make decisions based on what patterns are being observed. And being able to do this near real time really changes the advantage that a decision maker has. We have a student that finished recently, and his thesis was to understand the effectiveness of a quarterback. If you're not familiar with football, the amount of time that transpires between the time the quarterback receives the ball and he releases it is about 3 seconds. In that time, 11 players on each team, that is 22, are moving, and the number of things that happen are certainly a lot, right? The effort to understand how effective a quarterback is can start to be done with this instrumentation. So you can see how this might start to be used within the field. Similarly, in basketball, the effectiveness of a very good shooter, in this case a three-point shooter, can start to be understood in a very different way if we start to collect this data and we start to illustrate it spatially in this case. You can see that his effectiveness, even for those that are very good, as in the case of this player we're looking at, is not universal across the long-range three-point shot. In fact, if you look at the lower left-hand side, surprisingly, within 3 feet of his sweet spot, he is quite poor. So you might start to use this, especially as you collect it real time, to adjust and strategize. When it comes to the consumer side of things, I think one of the pictures that illustrates this very clearly is the Pope selection in 2005. If you look at this here, you see one phone in your lower right-hand corner. By the next election in 2013, we see a sea of smartphone devices. And this is certainly happening not just with consumer devices, but also in industry devices. And this is simply the beginning of much of what's taking place. All of this together is becoming a platform to enable this third generation in where industries are being transformed. And the levels of abstraction are such that being able to leverage this infrastructure is becoming much simpler. So let's go ahead and take a look at one of these. I'm sitting here with an Internet of Things device. This specific one here comes from Amazon, but it's really representative of many others that are appearing on the market. Some of them come from Google, some of them come from Apple, and one of the patterns that is establishing itself is that of interacting with a physical device using voice. This certainly lowers the barrier of technical expertise that is needed to interact. And you can do a lot of fun things, but you can also do business type applications. You can do home automation. It is really becoming a new platform. So let me go ahead and demonstrate that to you now. I'm going to issue a command to turn on these two lights that you see here. Alexa, turn on Hue. As you can see, I've gotten a red and a green light. This is propagating through the network. It's integrating several different services that are available on the network. I'm going through Amazon. I'm connecting to the Hue Philips network. I'm also going through my own home networking. So you can see that a lot of this is coming together. And in fact, this type of functionality, this stitching of functionality to be able to provide automation and new services is providing yet another platform. So all these services, these skills, this interaction with voice is certainly something that's new. But on top of that, all these different services are coming together in different platforms. And we will discuss some more of this. I think lastly, I wanted to mention that you can imagine how you can start to integrate this functionality of being able to interact with physical devices, Internet of Things devices, by coupling with location, by coupling with detection. So for example, one of the things that I tried right before I started this demonstration was simply to approach my home and have an application that detected me when I came within range of my home network. Once I did that, the lights would go on. And you can imagine that this is a pretty useful bit of functionality. You can do that with your climate control, you can do that with your lighting, and there's a number of tasks of home automation that you might want to do this way. So I'll go ahead and give you a couple more demonstrations of skills, as they're called in this platform, about what I can do. I can ask it, for example, to add a couple of numbers. Alexa, add 500 plus 200.
The sum of 500 and 200 is 700.
Let me give you one that is perhaps more fun. Alexa, play Another One Bites the Dust by Queen.
Another One Bites the Dust by Queen from Prime Music.
And now we're rocking, right? So you can get an idea there that there's certainly entertainment that can be done through the device. There's certainly business application, home automation, and you can see there the beginnings of a new platform for applications. Building on these platforms are a number of new companies that are addressing a very specific business problem and solving it on its own. One of the interesting ones is that of a virtual scheduling assistant. Many of us have been involved in situations where we're trying to coordinate a meeting between a number of people. And especially when those participants are not from the same organization and there's poor visibility into calendars, this can take 10 or more emails in order to be able to realize the meeting. In this case, you have here a company providing a virtual assistant, as you can see here on the right-hand side, Amy at X.AI, that will undertake all of this job for you. It will coordinate, it will get a consensus, and agree on a location. Now, this is simply one example of many of such services that are starting to appear. And when it comes to connecting to the Internet of Things, you already see a number of companies that are starting to address the question of orchestration. In this case, this is one of the first companies that appeared in the marketplace. It's called If This Then That. You can search for it online and you'll find it. And you can see how it's starting to provide functionality for you to integrate a number of your Internet of Things devices. You could create the number of services that you saw in the demonstration. Now, it does this in a way in where you're not required to have any technical expertise. You do not need to be a programmer. In this case, you can simply consume what they call recipes, some of the functionality. Say, for example, here on the upper right-hand side, when your car comes home, your lights will come on, or you can create your own, but you do not need to be a programmer. So you can see that the reach and the access to coupling functionality is much broader. It starts to be much like the web where anybody can participate. Now, this is simply one company of many that are appearing in the landscape, and this is one of the latest ones for Microsoft. As you can see here, it says work less, but actually do more. The multitude of services coupled with the orchestration engines are going to fuel a potential new generation of products and services. Certainly, the flexibility will be much higher. There are some parallels that can be drawn, in fact, to what's happening in the marketplace when it comes to software as a service. The lock-in and the capital investments are much smaller. So the ability to innovate and have higher level building blocks will certainly be an important one. Within academia, we're certainly following a similar pattern. A lot of the products we create, certainly the models, have had difficulties coming together. There's been great efforts to integrate these. Now we're building on similar ideas, on creating a platform upon which we can couple these models and answer new research questions. Certainly within government, this can be the building blocks to make better decisions. Ultimately, all of this together, as I mentioned, will lead to better predictability, better optimization, and certainly more flexibility when it comes to models. I'll close by mentioning the need for a transactional layer, the need for privacy, the need for data integrity. And many are looking to blockchain, a technology that has become pretty successful in the last few years, to provide these components. It provides privacy, it provides a distributed transactional layer, it provides a foundation that is decentralized. Much in the same way that the web allowed anybody to publish something globally, these technologies are allowing a transactional layer with integrity and privacy to become potentially the underlying foundation to the Internet of Things, data layer, and transactions. Now, this would certainly be something incredibly powerful and another layer to the internet, or the beginnings of something that improves on what we have seen with the web. A model for a new internet, a model for the Internet of Things. In closing, it's easy to see why everyone is so excited about the Internet of Things. There is tremendous potential. We've gone from a very simple idea of connecting a physical object onto the internet, much like the simple idea of connecting a page onto the web and making it accessible to the world. In this case, we've made a physical object accessible to the world. That simple idea has enabled a new generation of technologies. We went from realizing that in the world of RFID to being able to make it accessible across all industries. And today, there's a number of technologies that are further enhancing this simple idea. Certainly bringing cloud, the web protocols, machine learning, analytics are transforming industries. And we see a number of new technologies that are making it possible to stitch a lot of the simple functionality that is appearing in order to be able to couple devices, to collect information, and to be able to get better understanding. All of this together is providing new building blocks to a new generation of products and services. It is certainly an exciting set of possibilities that are being put before us. Now, I think in closing, one of the interesting questions to see over the next year is the evolution of blockchain in support of Internet of Things. So with that, I'd like to close off, and I'm certainly looking forward to the innovation that is taking place within Internet of Things.